So now we're up to class Chordata, and we're going to really focus in on class Chordata because that's where we belong. For some reason, people are super interested in humans, so we're going to build up to that by talking about the chordates. Now bear in mind, when we're talking about the chordates, everything we're talking about is us. The chordates have four things in common, all chordates across the board. They all have a notochord, a dorsal hollow nerve cord, pharyngeal slits at some point in their life, and a postanal tail. Across the board, every single one of them, including humans. First up, we got the notochord. It's a long, flexible rod that lies between the digestive system and the nerves that run right behind it. This will end up forming, eventually, a rudimentary backbone. But at its basal level, it's just a notochord, no backbone. There's a nerve cord that runs right behind that notochord. It's a long, thick line of nerves that goes the whole length of the organism. It's like a highway system for nerves. Lots of exit ramps, lots of ways to get onto it. It's going to end in a very, very large nerve cluster. Could be a ganglion, could be a brain. Big thing is, long thing of nerves with a big bundle of nerves at the top or at one end. All of these chordates have pharyngeal slits. These are openings near the mouth that let water move through them. In fish, you may see these as gills. It helps in feeding. It helps in respiration. Some organisms are going to pull water in across their pharyngeal slits and use them to filter microorganisms that they can eat. For us, we had these pharyngeal slits when we were developing, right where you would assume gills would be. And all of them have a postanal tail. So every single chordate out there does, including us. When people say they've fallen, they've broken their tailbone, they're not lying. There is a tailbone right there. It's fused, it's vestigial, it's under the skin for most people. There are some people born with it exposed. So of the chordates, then we're going to have this big split between acraniata or protochordata and vertebrates or vertebrata. We're going to talk about the simple ones first, then move into the more complex ones. The cephalochordates are going to be probably the most distantly related to us of the chordates. These guys are filter feeders. Here's a lancet. It buries itself in the sand. And it's got these tentacles waving out at the top. It doesn't look like it's related to us, but it's got all the same characteristics we do. It's got a notochord, dorsal nerve cord, postanal tail, and pharyngeal slits. The urochordates look even weirder. I mean, these look just like sponges, right? They're like vases that live on the bottom of the ocean. There's no postanal tail here. There's no pharyngeal slits, nothing like that. So why are these considered chordates? The reason these guys are considered chordates is because the larval form actually does have a postanal tail. It does have pharyngeal slits. It's got that notochord. It's got that dorsal nerve cord. So we're classifying it based on its larval form. But you guys don't really care about those. You care about the actual vertebrata, the things with backbones. Vertebrata are going to be most of the animals that you deal with on a day-to-day basis that aren't insects or annelids. Of the phylum Vertebrata, you've got several characteristics: a vertebral column, backbone, a cranium, an endoskeleton, usually a hardened endoskeleton, a series of neural crest cells, and lots and lots and lots of really diverse internal organs. Now, those internal organs are going to be highly conserved. So first off, that vertebral column. During development, that notochord is going to be replaced by a much, much stiffer backbone. Lots of interlocking vertebrae that are able to shift back and forth, that can interlink with each other, give it rigidity but also flexibility. I mean, you guys have a backbone. It's kind of hard. Maybe it's not for you. My daughter's a gymnast, or she fancies herself to be one. So she does these whole like bend over backwards, flip around, do this, do that. I can't do that stuff. Some people have more flexibility in their vertebral column. Other people don't. As you get older, you tend to lose it. There tends to be buildup of cartilage between these, or even worse, the loss of cartilage between them. At the tip top, you've got a cranium. That nerve collection at the top of the notochord might need to be protected. So the cranium's there to provide protection. Typically, the cranium is part of an endoskeleton, a hardened network of bone or cartilage. That bone or cartilage allows for muscle attachment points. It also allows for rigidity and some protection. Hey, do you know they found this whale skeleton up in the Appalachians? Like, just hanging out there. And people were like, how'd the whale get up there? Flying whales. That's what they know. They ended up, it turns out, surprisingly enough, that in the distant past, the ocean came up right to the Appalachians. And a whale died there. Washed up on the beach and got buried. You have a neural crest. These are cells that are going to build the skeleton and the other hard tissues within the organism. So these are going to be, I guess, an equivalent structure or analogous structure to the meristematic tissue of plants. Just a place to produce a lot of cells for bones. And you got lots and lots and lots of internal organs. The mesoderm is very, very highly diversified. The cool thing is this is conserved. So if you want to figure out how the human works, you don't have to open up a human to figure it out. You can open up a pig, a rat, a shark, just about any organism. There are some slight differences, but really, we're all the same inside. So we're going to go, in my opinion, from the least developed up through the most developed organisms, and we're going to start with the coelostomes, the hagfish and the lampreys. Coelostomes lack a vertebral column, so they lack a backbone. Yet we still consider them to be vertebrates. The reason we consider them to be vertebrates are we think that they had one at some point, and they lost it during evolution. So there's pretty strong evidence that they had a backbone and then eventually lost it. I am really interested in hagfish. I think they're super cool. And the reason I think they're so cool is because they produce this slime. Whenever they're threatened, whenever they're touched, when they're aroused, they produce a cloud of slime around them that clogs up the gills of other fish. And it's really neat because they produce this slime, and then after the predator or whatever has gone away, they have to clean the slime off. So in order to clean the slime off, they tie themselves in a knot, which they couldn't do if they had a backbone, and then, pardon the verb here, but they squeegee themselves off. I know this sounds weird, but do you know what I'm talking about? They sort of like, they get really tight, and then they're like, and the knot goes to the very end, and it flicks off all the slime, except the slime from their nostrils. And in order to get the slime from their nostrils out, they force themselves to sneeze violently. Bear in mind, fish do have nostrils. What are your nostrils good for? Yours. What? I'm not trying to trick you. Breathing, okay, but fish don't breathe through their nostrils. Even easier. What do you use your nose for? Smelling things, right? Chemical receptors. So they need to clear their nostrils so they can detect what's going on around them. And with that, I want to show you. Yeah. No. The gnathostomes, with nathostomes, we're looking at we're looking at fish. And this is one of my favorite quotes ever. So this is my daughter. So this was 6 years ago. She must have been 7. Her favorite fish is Dunkleosteus. And she said, to sum up the nathostomes, we got teeth and then we ate everything that was in front of us. That's what happens when you can do things that other people can't. You eat them. That sums up biology. First group is the chondrichthyes, sharks, skates, and rays. Sharks, skates, and rays don't have solidified bones. They have cartilaginous skeletons. Osteichthyes, these are fish with bony skeletons. This is the lionfish. They are an invasive species in Florida. They are eating everything. It's gotten to the point where there's been a really big push to convince people that these are delicacies so that they get overfished. We're actively trying to eat these guys out of existence in the Keys. Well, there's too many, and nobody has an incentive to. So by tricking people into thinking these are delicious, then they're going to be hunted more. I don't know. And then we hit the tetrapods. Tetra means 4. So these are 4-limbed organisms. There's 3 classes, Amphibia, Reptilia, and Mammalia. And they all began their evolution with 4 distinct limbs. A frog has 4 limbs. Does a bird have 4 limbs? Yes. What are the 4 limbs of a bird? That's right. Its legs and its wings. Sorry, some people don't get that. So as far as amphibians go, in general, they can live on land, but they must return to the water to reproduce. Amphi means both. They live both on land and in the water. For my example of an amphibian, I give you the, I believe it's called the terror frog. And what the terror frog does, it has an amazing self-defense mechanism. It has nothing to do with these little bristles here, these little hairs. What they do is they will give themselves compound fractures in order to expose their bones to attack whoever's attacking them. So they literally, up in the forearm, they will twist their wrist back far enough to snap a bone so it protrudes, and then it'll attack using that bone. It's like, Wolverine, except, they eventually heal. So I think that's a great defense mechanism, because if, again, you're being attacked in an alleyway and somebody comes at you and you break your bone, your arm, give yourself a compound fracture and start stabbing at them, they're going to back the hell off. With frogs, frogs have been found to have a lot of secondary metabolites excreted in their skin. Poison dart frogs have been known for thousands of years for their metabolites that slow down the human body. They cause death. We have found a painkiller that's 200 times more powerful than morphine in the secretions of a frog. Now, I don't know what you would do with the painkiller 200 times more powerful, because morphine's pretty darn powerful. And then we're like, look, we're going to give you something better. Just lick this frog. It will kill you. It will absolutely kill you. But what they're exploring with it is the way this action works, the way it acts on the human body, so that we can determine how to make new or better classes of drugs that may not be as addictive. Toads. Okay, toads aren't nearly as cool, but fun fact about toads, they wipe their mouths and hands after eating, with their hands after eating. So I always have this impression whenever I see this of a toad just like, that was a delicious fly. Yes, very good. I just love that. I don't know why, that sticks with me. It's got manners, yeah. Frog and toad are friends. Salamanders. Salamanders will shed their tails in order to escape a predator. That does 2 things. One, it gives the predator a nice meal, or at least a nice snack. That's not the whole salamander. And 2, it confuses them. Have you guys ever accidentally pulled a tail off a salamander or a lizard? No, it's on purpose? You're messed up. It's like, If you have, you're going to notice two things. One, the salamander runs like hell. And two, that tail keeps wriggling back and forth. That's terrible. But the thing is, that confuses the predator. It thinks they still have the organism that's trying to escape. So they leave the real organism alone, the rest of it. Good news is it can recover. This is a giant salamander. That's as big as they get. You just don't want to ever find one. Okay. South America. Yeah, so you're okay. It's not like you can go over to the James River and be like, well, that sucks. Giant salamander. There are multiple species of giant salamander. The caecilians are really cool to me. They were discovered in the 1990s. And they found it in a large, it was large, it was water-dwelling, and it had no lungs. Literally no lungs in it. So what they thought was, okay, we found this organism, we know it lives in water, and it's got no lungs, so it has to get its oxygen through diffusion. In order for that to work, they said, okay, then it has to live in cold water, because cold water carries more oxygen, holds more oxygen, and it has to live in fast-running water, so the water's constantly moving past it. Turns out, though, when they found it alive, they found it in warm, low-lying rivers in the Amazon. So slow-moving, hot water. And they're like, we don't get it anymore. But I love these guys because they're like nature's evil sock puppet. If you look at them, don't they have like that Muppet look to them? Yeah. Like little button eyes. So it really is like somebody threw a sock puppet and said, you know what, now that's an animal. Then there's reptiles. They have lots and lots of adaptations that help them live on land. Remember, so we were going from amphibians that are still linked to the water to reptiles that are fully land-bound. And what they've got going on for them is this desiccation-resistant skin, thoracic breathing, so muscle-based breathing, kidneys that conserve water, and internal fertilization. I always love looking at tortoises because they look so deliberate. They're like, I am going to go down this step. This is the most important step I will go down in my life. So their skin is made up of these hydrophobic molecules. And they prevent water from leaving. They've got these scales. So gases and water sort of stay in them unless they actively excrete them or actively remove them. Their breathing is controlled by thoracic breathing, so muscle movements. They've got well-developed muscles that are going to force air into their lungs. Amphibians don't have that. They have kidneys that conserve water. So what their kidneys do is they concentrate waste into urine. So you don't lose a lot of water when you pee. You just lose just enough to get those wastes into a solution. All the rest of the water is pulled back out. And internal fertilization. You guys ever seen a frog egg? Looks like jelly. It's got the consistency of jelly. That would not survive on land. Fertilization has to occur internally for these reptiles, which is different than frogs. Frogs are going to sort of the male gets on top of the female. As she's laying eggs, he fertilizes the eggs as they come out. With reptiles, though, they have to actively mate. So there's internal fertilization because they're going to have shells that have a hard exterior layer. You're not going to be able to get sperm into those shells. So before the hardened exterior shell forms, you need to have fertilization. So we've got lots of examples like turtles. There are aquatic turtles. You guys have seen, if you've ever gone by a river, you see turtles sort of like climbing up on logs, hanging out, sunning themselves. Turtles actually can get some oxygen through this large, sort of their neck region. It's called cloaca. And that lets them remain submerged for a lot longer. It actually also lets them remain submerged to hibernate. So they go into a torpor or like a near-death state. They just hang out at the bottom and they get all of their respiratory needs through diffusion. It is. And he's got this big mouth, just like, what are you guys doing? Snakes. Yeah, okay, so I'm a biologist. I don't like snakes. They're abominations unto the world. They have no legs. They freak me the hell out. But it's not even, it's if I know it's there, I'm good. It's that, hey, look, there's this thing here. And let me tell you about there are two experiences in my life that really messed me up with snakes. One, I was going on a walk with my wife. We were going for a walk through the woods. There was a lake near our house and a path walking around it. We would walk this lake, every day. It was a 3-mile walk. It was great. My daughter was recently born, so I was carrying her, and my wife was walking, and rolling down the hill come 2 snakes. Now, these 2 snakes, rolling, because they were mating. And snakes mate very vigorously. So they didn't really care about us, but 2 snakes rolling down the hill at me freaked me out. So then I jump over. Well, this is early spring, so these guys are just emerging. They're like, I'm going to have some sex, and then I'm going to go find some food. Those guys roll down the hill, and I'm like, all right, well, this sucks. Let's just start walking home. And then as we're walking, probably about a 5.5-foot-long water snake came out and crossed the path, went right into the lake. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm done now. You hold the baby. I'm just going to close my eyes for the rest of the trip. So then I thought, we're never walking that again. I know what lives there. Moved to my new house at that point in Danville, Virginia. I'm carrying the kid again because that's what I do. She was a lot older at that point. She was like 4, so she could stand on her own. But I was just carrying her into the house. Walk over to the house. I open up I go to unlock the door, and I see the cat staring at me. And I thought he was staring at me. And I was like, huh. But the cat's sort of there with those narrow cat eyes. And I was like, that cat's not looking at me. So I turned my head this way. And dangling from the gutter right here was a snake that apparently was eating the birds that were roosting there. It just looks at me, and I look at it, and then I put my daughter down, and I run away. That's right. Totally abandoned her, and I went in through the basement. And my wife said, why'd you put the baby down? I said, because there's a snake there. And she said, well, why didn't you take the baby? And I was like, look, I could make another kid. So, at that point, we hadn't invested so much in her, you know? All right, so anyways, my 2 snake stories. It's okay. I've gotten better lately. There's snakes that live in my backyard. And I was cutting the grass, and I looked at them, and I didn't run them over. And I thought that took willpower, courage. So I did not kill the snakes. I looked at them and was like, go, be free, snake. Kill all of the stupid things out there. In Virginia, there are a grand total of 3 snakes you need to watch out for. The northern copperhead, the eastern cottonmouth, and the timber rattlesnake. You guys have heard of copperheads, right? You've probably encountered them. And you probably are like, I shouldn't touch that. 1, it's a snake, and 2, it's got that poisonous look to it. You can really tell these poisonous snakes by the shape of their heads. That's right. So if they've got that sort of diamond shape, that triangular head, really worry about it. If they got a rounded, broad head, they're okay. But behold the range of the northern copperhead. It's everywhere. Check us out. The eastern cottonmouth. People are like, there's a snake in the water. It must be a cottonmouth. Not really. Not where we live. Not particularly much. It is warming up. These are old slides. Climate is changing. It's getting warmer, so their range is going to increase. The timber rattlesnake is typically going to be found in the mountains, but look at its range. So we're on the extreme edge. These are the only snakes you got to worry about, though. Lizards. As far as lizards go, the one I want to talk about is the Komodo dragon, not an American one. They can grow up to 10 feet. They are clever hunters. They tend to look at their prey. They figure out the way where the prey travels, and then they're going to wait in ambush near that near that path. This is smart. Work smarter, not harder, right? Then they will lunge and bite their prey. Typically, they're not going to then attack it until it's dead. Then they back off because they know, all right, I've got some slight toxicity in my mouth, and my mouth is full of bacteria. So the wound gets infected. The toxins start working. They break down. Start to mess with the immune system, and the prey gets weaker and weaker and weaker. The prey is still moving along. The Komodo dragon is just following it, just waiting. Sort of like that impending death. You just see it back there. It's like if you've ever seen a horror movie, right? Things are the bad guy just moves really slowly. You never see like somebody wielding a hatchet start chasing like as fast as they can at you. Right? Jason doesn't run. It's just step, very slow movements. That's the Komodo dragon. Until eventually the organism lays down to sleep because it's so weak, and then it gets eaten. If you attack it back, it tends to back off, and it'll just wait. They can wait for days. It depends on the size of the organism.
Do they spit fire?
Hmm?
Do they spit fire?
They don't spit fire. Crocodilians. So you've got alligators that are very, very heavy. They live in America. Hey, do you guys know the northern range of the alligator in America? Just take a guess. Virginia. That is the correct answer. Virginia is the northernmost edge right now of the alligator, to the point where it would not be unexpected to me to eventually start seeing alligators up the James. They're definitely in the tidal basins. They're definitely in the Great Dismal Swamp. So alligators are super fun. They are big, they are heavy, but they can move at about 30 miles an hour over very, very short distances. So don't go up to one and start poking it. They will lunge, and when they lunge, they can move quick and grab. If they grab you, typically the strategy of an alligator is grab a land-based species, pull it into the water, drown it. So hold on to it until it's drowned, until it drowns, and then take it back to its, for lack of a better word, its lair, and let it rot. Yes?
Okay, so you know how there are all these like survival myths online, like what to do if you encounter blank.
Right.
So a lot of them say for like alligators, you run in like zigzags, and they can't do that for some reason.
Okay, so typically that's true. You don't want, if you're right in front of it, it can lunge quick at you.
Okay.
But it's not going to lunge. If you run 30 yards, which is, if you're freaked out by an alligator, that's not going to be hard for you to do. You'll be out of its range. The big thing is
You don't have to do zigzags?
you don't have to do zigzags. You just got to move. And you don't want to be directly in front of it. So maybe the zigzag is, if it's right in front of you, you go that way. Because it has to reorient itself. Yes?
I thought they spun you around,
That's part of the drowning.
Okay.
So yeah, they grab you, pull you in, and to drown you, they do this sort of like death roll.
Crazy.
Those people that like they do this big shows of like wrestling with alligators and stuff.
Those people are insane.
Like they've lost arms and stuff. And I've seen videos online.
Yeah.
They stick their head in there and they get decapitated.
Yeah, well, okay, so slightly more that's not on the slide about alligators, just because I did a lot of research when I was in Florida on them. They have an enormous bite force coming down, but they have hardly any bite force opening. So you can easily hold an alligator's jaw shut. But once it's open, it will crush bone. So what a lot of those alligator wrestlers do is they make sure that jaw stays closed. Let me tell you a fun alligator story, because I got time. This is how I got in good with my wife's grandmother. I became the good one. So I had just met the family. It was I was going down to Florida to meet her grandmother because, all old people live in Florida. So I went down to Florida, and I don't know that they really liked me, but they were just sort of like, well, I guess if you're happy about him, that sort of thing. I was like, okay, great. So I'm down there, and her grandmother has this little yappy dog. You know the kind I'm talking about? And she really loved this dog, but this dog was a puppy, and she was an older woman, and because her other dog that for like 15 years had just died. So they had this yappy dog, and the yappy dog, on a rainy day, had to be a rainy day, got out of the house. So we look at the yappy dog go. Her grandfather's outside smoking because that's like what he did. That was like his big thing was, I'm going to go smoke all the time. And he looks at it go, and I'm like, ugh. So she tries to catch the dog first in the stereotypical pink slippers. She goes out the door, and she's like, wait. And then her grandfather's like, I'll take care of this. And he starts running in a grandfather mode, but he was smoking all day, so he's like, I'll skid him. So he stops, and then I look out, and I'm like, well, it's up to me, isn't it? This is my chance. This is my chance to make sure I'm in the family. So I go tearing out the door. I got my shoes first. I go tearing out the door, and I'm like, I'll catch the dog. Well, the dog's like, well, we're going to play now. So the dog's running away from me, and I'm running as fast as I can after the dog. And I think to myself, all right, this is a retirement community. It's all square, so I'm going to go like one street down and over. So I go one street down, and I start going this way, and I parallel the dog, and I sort of trap it up against this lake. Because in my mind, I think, wait. I see where this is going. So I parallel, and then I come down the street, and the dog sees me, and instead of running back to the house, which is what I thought it would do, it turns toward the lake and starts running as fast as it can toward the lake, and I'm running after it. There are 3 boats on the along a dock on this lake. It goes down the dock, onto the first boat, jumps from the first boat to the second boat, from the second boat to the third boat, and then apparently thinks there's a 4th boat after that one, and just goes right into the lake. And I get down there and I'm like, oh. Well, I know there's 3 alligators in this thing, and I just don't know where they are. And I look down there, and I see the dog. Now the dog's like, oh, I'm in water. I have to get back on land. So it comes over to get on land. Well, the issue is this is a Florida lake, and they're all built up to stop the alligators from getting out. So the dog is right up against the edge going like this, trying to get up. I'm looking at it, I'm like, you're a dumb dog. I can't reach it. It's too far down because if I could reach it, the alligator could get up. So that's when I did the calculation. So I'm like, okay, what are the odds that the alligator is there? So I sat down, I took my phone out, and I took off my shoes, and I got in the lake to get the stupid dog because I had a plan. If the alligator was coming, I got the dog, by the way. I got the dog in my hand. The dog's like, I like you now, licking me and everything. And I'm like, I can't reach to get the dog up there. So I thought to myself, if the alligator's coming at me, I'll just chuck the dog. Right. I'm just thinking ahead. And then luckily, her grandfather, at this point, he gets down there and he looks at me holding the dog and he's like, you need some help? I was like, yes. So I hand him the dog, looking around for the alligator to hold. This is like the scariest 5 minutes of my life. How did I hand him the dog? Because he reached down and I reached up. So I couldn't just reach down and pluck the dog out. But it was, it's only about a 3-foot difference. He laid down. It's really funny. Anyway, so he's all wet. He was mad about that. And then I was like, well, how do I get out? And he's like, I don't know. So I had to go to the dock and, shimmy up it. Anyways, I got back to the house after looking around. The alligator was actually at her house. So it was not with where I was. It was like swimming by then. Because I got back, and that's when I became the one who was liked. Because I went in and risked my life for a stupid dog because of these alligators, and the only thing that really kept me going was thinking, I know the way alligators work, I know the way they hunt, and if something worse comes to worst, I can just throw the dog. Ornithischians. All right, so all of the beaked dinosaurs, they've got these bird-like hips, are the ornithischians. Then you got the Saurischians, they have more lizard-like hips. They're extinct now, so they don't really matter. But coming out of the Ornithischians came the birds, aves. You guys all know birds. Let me tell you the story of Cher Ami. So Cher Ami, during World War I, there was an Allied, there's an American platoon who was under heavy fire and who was cut off from their reinforcements and couldn't get information out. They didn't have a working radio, so what they did was they had a carrier pigeon, because this is how war used to work. And they tied a note to the carrier pigeon, and they threw the carrier pigeon into the air, hoping it would get over enemy lines and deliver their communication that they needed help. So they threw it up into the air, and then it was shot. And that was like, no, seriously, so it was like, go pigeon! Boom! Flump. And they're like, well, crap, we're dead now. But that pigeon hobbled its way through enemy lines with one leg to get to, and made it to their, to somebody on their side who got the message to command, who sent reinforcements, and they ended up not only holding the position but taking new ground. This is the only pigeon, only bird to win the Distinguished Service Cross. The soldiers put it up, and not only did they do that in true soldier fashion, it lost an eye in the process, so they gave it an eye patch. And it lost a leg, so they gave it a peg leg. That was an amazing story to me that I just had to share with you. All right, so now we're at mammals. Mammals all have, they all have lots of stuff in common. They have milk glands, they all have hair, they have specialized teeth, and they have enlarged skulls. First off, the mammary glands. So mammals, mammary. Mammary glands are really important for producing milk. Now, milk is very, very rich in fat, sugar, protein, and minerals. It's got everything the baby needs to survive. All mammals produce milk. They all have hair in one way or another. And that hair can be used for insulation. It can be used to retain heat, because air will get trapped between the hairs, and air is an insulator. It can be used for defense, like with a porcupine, or it can be used for sensation. Whales use their hairs to sense what's going on in the water. In fact, you guys probably use your hairs for sensation as well, like your leg hairs or your arm hairs. If there's like a bug crawling on you, what's the first way you feel it? It's your hairs start moving. So hair's important. We all have specialized teeth. If you look at a lizard's mouth, all of the teeth are the same. But you look at your mouth and you've got vast variety of teeth. From teeth that are used for crushing, to teeth that are used for shearing, to teeth that are used for ripping. You got a big skull because you got a big brain. So to go through all of the different groups of mammals, we're going to start with the rodents, rodentia, mice, rats, squirrels, beavers, and porcupines. All of this group has constantly elongating teeth. Their teeth will grow and grow and grow through their entire life. If they don't gnaw on things, if they don't wear them down, then that's going to cause severe deformation. The teeth will end up growing sideways, or they may end up actually piercing the roof of the mouth. So when you see mice and squirrels and all these things chewing on different matter, it's to keep their teeth worn down.
It's obviously not a reptile, but I remember a special kind of boar with like tusks that if it isn't constantly using them, they'll grow back into its skull.
Right. So these organisms always need to start gnawing on stuff. When I was working in labs with rats, we had to trim their teeth, because if they were on a diet that was a liquid diet, or if they were on a diet that didn't have things for them to chew on for the study, their teeth would keep growing. So you'd have to take literally a pair of pliers and just clip their teeth. Not rip them out, but clip them. So sort of sort of like nails, yeah. So if you were to just bite down a little, like sort of chomp, you don't have terribly much sensation on the top of your teeth. The nerves are deep down. Do you see what I'm saying? So if you're imagine a rodent, they've got long teeth, but the nerves aren't all the way through. Chiroptera, the bats. Bats have the ability to fly using sonar. So we developed this technology to use for us to find ships and things like that. Turns out these guys had perfectly evolved them. Their large ears help to, using both ears at the same time, they have to do that. It allows them to get an idea of their surrounding based entirely on sound returns. Now, there are lots of colonies of bats around here. I'm not sure if you guys have seen them flying around early evenings. I learned something really cool. If you have a set of keys on you and you're walking out to a parking lot and you see a bunch of bats, if you jingle your keys, that sometimes makes the same frequency as a mosquito, so they dive. So I haven't done it here, but in Danville I used to go out because we had a big bat colony there, and I was walking out behind students, and as I was walking, I'd pull out my keys and jingle them, and suddenly they'd be dive bombed by all these bats. It was hilarious. It was probably not a good thing to make evil minions of the night out of them, but now you guys know, with great power comes great responsibility. All right, I don't have much to say about the Leptophila. These are your shrews, moles, and hedgehogs. They're cute. That's all I got. Primates, us, monkeys, apes, we use tools. That kind of sets us apart from most organisms aside from the octopods and dolphins. But we use those tools to mess with other species and see how they work. Carnivora, cats, dogs, bears, and seals. They're all flesh-eating mammals, and I think it's hilarious that all of the cute, cuddly, stuffed animals we make are things that would destroy us. Artiodactyls, pigs, camels, sheep, and cattle. They've got horns. I always forget that giraffe have horns. And they always look so weird to me whenever I look at it. It's like I have to take a few minutes to be like, yeah, those are horns, I guess. But what's up?
I have a question about hyenas.
Yes.
So, obviously, I'm sure you're aware that I think they scare me the most.
Hyenas?
Yeah.
Don't worry, they don't live here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
They scare me the most, though, out of all carnivora. Maybe tigers, too, but mostly hyenas.
Okay.
They're vicious, Christ. And so there was this picture of a hyena, like its intestine was falling out, and it was, like, gnawing on it. Have you seen that?
I have not.
I'm just wondering why.
Why it would do that?
Yeah.
At that point, it's probably, for lack of a better word, it's been driven crazy. That much pain it's not just going to gnaw on itself. But you're right. Hyenas are a top-tier predator. People used to think the lion was the top of the food chain in Africa. Right. But the big thing is, with hyenas, after going out at night and recording predation on the plains at night, what they would find is the hyena was actually the top predator. It would take down the prey, and then the lions would come in afterwards.
Literal shreds.
Yeah.
Just like most pictures of them is just blood. It's like, oh my god.
Yeah, you don't want to mess with hyenas.
No, I just was wondering why it was doing that.
No, likely it's more than likely because of the pain. Diprontia. So these are your marsupials. They all have pouches. Now the deal is, you've seen a lot of things where people are like, let's just stick this in a pouch. Those pouches are filled with mucus and they're disgusting. Don't just go up to, like, if you ever get a chance, don't go up to a kangaroo and just feel around in its pouch. You have to ask permission. What? I have not heard of the quokka.
I was wondering what they are. They are so cute, and I think you should look at it. And I think that's a pouch. It's a pouch.
So we need to look up the quokka? Yeah. So we got our lagomorphs. Lagomorphs are, they're rabbits, hares. These guys have very, very, very powerful hind legs and rodent-like teeth. They scream like children if you ever upset one. Literally, it sounds like a baby crying. Cetaceans. The cetaceans are going to include dolphins and whales. These are ocean-going mammals, so they're not fish. I know you're college students, you know this, or at least you should. I do want to point out they were nowhere near related to manatees. They're not related to sea lions. They're not related to walruses, except that all are mammals. Those other organisms come from different groups, from like Artiodactyl, or they come from carnivora. The killer whale, the orca, is in fact a dolphin, in case you didn't know that. It's called a killer whale, not because it's a whale that kills things, but because it is a dolphin that kills whales. Now, the more you know. One I want to talk about is the narwhal. I love how the narwhal the male has a single very large tooth growing out of its mouth. It gets about 10 feet long. Now, because this is only found in males, what do you have to think it's for? It's for mating. You got to impress the females. Two ways this happens that we think. One is that the males joust with each other. They literally will sit there and sword fight with their teeth, which is kind of weird when you think about it, but that's what they do. The other thing that's thought that they do is they rub it along the side of the female. Sort of just like, hey, are you in the mood? Poke, 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 right. Now, explorers saw these narwhals in breaks in the ice, and they saw this long tusk, and they thought, unicorns. And then they realized, no, they're just dolphin-y whale things. But I bet other people would think they're unicorns, so they would cut the horns off, take it back, and say, we discovered unicorns. Prisodactyla, horses and rhinos. These are hoofed mammals with odd numbers of toes. The rhinoceros is going extinct. You guys know that. Did you know, though, that at one point, the horse almost went extinct? No, I know. Isn't that weird? You don't think about that. Not only did the horse almost go extinct, so did deer. In America, deer were almost entirely wiped out right after the last ice age. They survived literally on one small island. And then there were no predators on that island. And then eventually that island acted as sort of the hub from which they started spreading out again. So we almost lost horses. Well, actually, horses did go extinct, but then we brought them back with us. And then deer almost went extinct and then rebounded on their own. Pardon? What are? Rhinos are. Some species are starting to bounce back. Some are not. Some are, like, I think the black rhino is officially extinct now. Just in the past, 2 months. Monotremes. Monotremes are like the duck-billed platypus. The duck-billed platypus is that creature that nobody really thought should exist. It's got the bill of a duck, the webbing, and the tail of a beaver. It's got poisonous spurs, and it produces milk through glands throughout most of its skin. And it lays eggs. I mean, it's kind of weird, but it's really well adapted to surviving in slow-moving rivers because it uses the senses underneath the beak in order to detect what's going on underneath it, and it can root for invertebrates with it. Proboscideans, like elephants, they have a very long prehensile muscular trunk that's used for manipulation. These guys are not creatures you want to mess with. They are much, much stronger than you, much, much bigger than you, and they carry grudges. Yeah, they are very intelligent creatures. People, though, really begin to get emotionally attached to them and forget that they're animals. So, although there was this one story. I'm not sure. Have you ever heard the story about the scientist who was studying elephants and pulled the splinter out from underneath its paw or underneath its pad?
Did
You
you
ever-
remember the scientist after like encountering it later? Or
Yeah, so what ended up happening was you had this elephant, and it was out in the savannah. And the scientist went out there and saw the elephant, and the elephant looked like it was in a lot of pain. What had happened was you guys have gotten something like jammed under your nail before, right? And it hurts like crazy. It had a stick jammed between its toe, under its toenail. So it was like a splinter under there. So the scientist stopped recording his data and went up to the elephant. And the elephant didn't do anything because it couldn't move really well because it had this stick. Couldn't put weight on it. The weight would just drive the stick further in. So the guy went in and approached it very carefully and pulled the splinter out. And the elephant sort of put its foot down, looked at him, and then left. Wasn't going to deal with this. And then a few years later, what happened is the guy went to a zoo. And he looked at the zoo, and there was an elephant in the zoo. And the elephant looked at him, and he looked at the elephant. And the elephant sat there and just raised its foot up, and then put its foot down, and then raised its foot up, and then put its foot down. And so the guy climbed, you know those fences they have that say, like, do not climb over? So the guy climbed over the fence and went over to the elephant, and the elephant looked at him and then gored him to death. The end. Yeah, that's what safety fences are for. Don't go in and deal with wild animals. No, I totally made up that story. Yeah, I made up the whole story. Yes?
There was something similar that happened to that. I don't remember what it was, but somebody did help like an elephant like while like there and then encountered it again. And it did remember them.
Yeah, that was debunked. That's what I based the story on, yeah.
When was it debunked?
It was debunked like a year or two ago. It was one of the Snopes things, yeah.
So excited when I read that. I was like, I love elephants.
Here are the review questions for this lecture. There's a lot to take in for this lecture. Characteristics of animals, how they're classified, distinguishing characteristics of mammals. I'm not going to go into tell me differences between like a lagomorph and a rodent or anything crazy like that. Any questions?